Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. While listening, you'll be exposed to inspiring, empowering, and unifying perspectives that I'm highly confident will yield stellar results in your life if you opt to try them on for size. Also, at optimistic.tv, we have officially begun releasing the first few episodes of our new late-night style, consciousness-elevating video variety talk show, Optimistic, which features live visionary art, soul share interviews, retreat guests here at the Mystic Manor, as well as live musical performances. I'm also super excited to announce that we are currently making plans to release the rest of Season 1 on my personal favorite online streaming service. So stay tuned to optimistic.tv to follow the unfolding development of this exciting Optimistic expansion, as we'll be posting more info and release dates there soon. And in the meantime, be sure to check out, of course, the first few episodes at optimistic.tv as well. All right, all you positive heads, welcome, welcome. Here we grow again. It is a magical Monday here in the studio as I record, and I'm excited to announce that I have a very special guest here with me today. I have my lovely partner in rhyme.
What?
Partner in, we're a rap duo.
Yeah.
This is my partner, Karen. And Karen, welcome to the show. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hello to all you positive heads out there.
All right, let's bust into our freestyle rhymes. Ready? No.
What up?
So we decided, we've been talking about, Karen and I have been dating almost coming up on a year. Wow.
Yeah.
And it's, we've talked about doing this for a very, very long time. Mm-hmm. And we have, it was one of those things that was a very slow, so actually we're going to share the synchronicity story of how we ended up together because, it's a cool story. And so really, if you take that into consideration, is a very slow build in our relationship.
Yeah, I guess we've known each other going on 9 years now then.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, like 9 years. And we really started dating last, August?
Yeah.
And from there, it was like a very, just kind of seeing each other. And then after a long period with not really, we met years and years and years ago. And then anyway, we've quarantined together this whole apocalypse moment over the last few months. And that's, being together like nonstop then has been really, really fun and interesting and cool. And so, I'll tell you guys the story. So you guys know I love all the energetic tie-ins. Well, you've heard me talk in the past about my partner many, many years ago that I met on my birthday, which, of course, I have my birthday synchronicity, July 28th, 2012. And from that partner, I met Karen actually a few months later, the same girl that I met her through. They have a mutual girlfriend, Miko. And through Miko, I met that July 28th, 2012, the same night I met Miko, I met my ex-girlfriend, Gabrielle. And then from there, that led to my last partnership as well. And then now, many, many years later, Karen, like literally out of the same pool over almost a decade, my last 3 serious relationships. So it's really fascinating for me to consider because I met you in 2012 and kind of had a little mini crush on you at that time, but it was like nothing, and years and years and years passed, and then here we are. We both ended up in LA years later.
And then the only time we saw each other after we first met, before we reconnected, now both living in LA, was at Lightning in a Bottle almost exactly 5 years ago.
Oh, right.
Because that week I ran into you and I saw you and I asked you, because you'd been talking about wanting to do something different and more meaningful with your life. And so I asked you, did you do it?
And to raise consciousness on the planet.
Yeah, I said, did you do it? Are you doing something more impactful? And you said, yeah, actually, I just launched a podcast this week.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. So in 2012 when we met, I talked about wanting to raise consciousness on the planet. 2015... we ran into each other there, and yeah, I just launched the show, and you listened to a total of one episode, right?
Total of one episode, and then I was like, this is weird, like listening to Brandon, this dude that I met twice, talking in my ear, so I'm not gonna listen. But then I followed you on social media, and I saw you posting about your optimistic, and I was like, what is he talking about? What's going on here? But I saw that it was in Venice, and I had moved to LA a couple years earlier, so it was only about 25 minutes from my house. So I hit you up on your birthday and said, happy birthday.
On my birthday again. So, yeah. And then she ended up coming to a live taping, and the rest is sort of history. So yeah, we've been talking for a while about her coming on because she is pretty epic. She has some really epic perspectives and actually keeps me on my toes mentally for sure. And we had a really interesting conversation that unraveled over the last few days, and this morning when we were kind of concluding this ongoing conversation, I thought, you know what, you should come on, we should talk about this. Now, before we do, I want to also share another cool synchronicity. So not only out of the thousands and thousands of people who I've met over the last few years, or just in my life, I've always been super social. Like literally the last 3 partners that I've had have all came out of the same little itty bitty pool. But so here's a cool synchronicity. This morning, Karen rolled over and said, first thing you said to me was what? About your dream, right?
Yeah, I woke up and I said, I had a dream last night. I was at summer camp with some of my guy friends, and we were sitting in a top bunk, and I was eating mini cupcakes.
And so I am like, okay, I'm half asleep. Like, thanks. That was a very uninteresting dream. Usually if you share a dream, it's like, there's some like really epic, like, oh my gosh, I just talked to aliens or whatever.
Yeah, I almost didn't share it because it was so pointless.
Until I opened my note from the universe this morning, and it was, here it is. Detours, challenges, and crisis, Brandon, are simply covers for miracles that had no other way of reaching you. It's all good, the universe. And then the PS is, cupcakes, ding-dongs, and ho-hos, Brandon, are just plain old miracles. So, yeah, I'm like, that was literally within 5 minutes of her telling me about her cupcake dream. I get that. So, and then we actually went to the beach today and saw deep-fried ding-dongs, and we almost got one. I didn't quite go in for it, but yeah. So there's a fun little synchronicity for you guys. So yeah, let's talk. Okay, just to kind of summarize, because it was a lengthy conversation over days. But, Karen, maybe you can give a real quick, rundown on what you do and what you're...
Sure. So I am getting my master's in speech language pathology, and I've been working in the field of disabilities for going on 10 years now. And specifically over the last 10 years, I've worked especially with kids with more severe disorders, a lot with autism, but a lot of other disabilities as well. And so the reason I got interested in speech therapy is because I worked with a lot of children who were nonverbal and who used what we call in the field AAC, or augmentative and alternative communication, to communicate. So they communicate through, a lot of them are like speech generative devices. Stephen Hawking's is probably the most common person that people think of with this sort of communication. And so I entered speech language pathology with that in mind, that I really want to specialize in working with individuals with communicative disorders who, for speech, is just not meeting their communicative needs, and they need alternative means. And I'm there to help them find those means and learn how to use them to communicate.
So, yeah, we were going back and forth about people's talking about, intelligence, nature versus nurture, and, whether or not, someone is intelligent based off of, more how they were raised and what they were taught versus is there an inherent intelligence that's the same for everyone. And what I was suggesting is something that you guys have all heard me talk about, and that is, the idea that we all sort of, I believe, as our souls evolve, we then come into, we probably all, for example, listening to this podcast, we're all on a path of self-discovery and becoming our greatest and greatest self. And we've probably all been there and done that we look at someone who's like out there right now who could care less about self-development, who's super negative, who's actually stealing and harming people and just taking what they can. And my personal view of that is that it's someone who is a younger soul in a sense. They've had less incarnations and they're still going through that sort of experience of separation mentality, or maybe their intelligence level is lower in some regards, right? And Karen, being the most amazing soul who views everyone through a lens of equality and equal competence in a sense, and as she puts it, how did you put it? Presumed competence with anyone that you talk to, and that just jumped out at me as such a beautiful perspective. And I think it's a very, we went back and forth about this quite a bit, but I really love that you guys have probably heard the quote it's attributed to Einstein, but of course, like most quotes now, as soon as I pull it up, it says not an Einstein quote, but whoever the heck said it, I love it. And the quote is, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. So her and I have went back and forth about, nature versus nurture and how the soul's journey, takes place. And so you shared this idea of presumed competence, and I regardless of any differences or the sort of debates we were having, I really, really loved this idea of presumed competence. So maybe you can share what
so essentially my alternative viewpoint to that, you see this person who's maybe stealing or all these things and consider them as a less highly evolved soul. The way I look at it is every single person, I'm going to presume that by presuming competence, I'm presuming that every single person that I interact with, regardless of the way they talk, the way they look, the way they dress, the way they show up, the way that they're behaving, every single person has equal probability in my eyes to be a equally or more highly evolved soul than me. And we went back and forth with this for a while because Brandon's viewpoint was really like, that just can't be so, just statistically speaking. Like if you look and there's going to be a bell curve, and I get that and I understand the statistics of that, but the reason that I specifically choose to take on this perspective of presumed competence is because in my experience, and I've had a lot of experience with this, is when you look at someone and you assume that they can be the highest version of themselves, then they will be, and they can be, and they transform. But if you come with any sort of expectation, if you meet somebody on the street and, they're talking and they sound uneducated and, they're dressed poorly and maybe they look dirty and you catch a vibe that you feel like they're shady or whatever, and you immediately have an expectation of, oh, look at this lesser soul, like they're still learning, they're still growing. You don't give them the opportunity to step up into that highest version of themselves. And if you approach them and presume like, oh wow, look at this person, they very well could be a much more highly evolved soul than me, then it opens the door for lessons to come through them, and it opens the door for you to be able to hear their message, even if they're not communicating in a way that you would consider as intelligent or educated or whatever it is.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, presumed competence, it's definitely just an advanced way to view people. Like, it's almost like a separate conversation from the one we were having, about, how far along is a soul's, is a soul in their evolution, because no matter who it is, it really ties into this idea of treating everyone as if they're the master and you're the student. Mm-hmm. Because even if the person is really, let's just say they aren't competent, from whatever standards, like they're just foolish and uneducated, and they do something to you from that state. If it's happening for you, not to you. as some sort of teaching or lesson. So it's like the guy flipping you off on the street as he cuts you off and is just driving like a maniac. He's not someone that, you're thinking, wow, this is a really advanced, amazing person to model myself after. But at the same time, if you're on the receiving end of that, it's because it's helping you, I believe, to sharpen your axe and helping you to become. So in that sense, they don't know that they're a master, but they're behaving as a master.
Right. And just to expand on this and give some background of where I came to this conclusion, presumed competence is something that we talk about in the field of disabilities a lot. Because with anyone with a disability, there's even some, discussion. A lot of people no longer even use the word disability. We just talk about people having different disabilities, people having complex needs. So the population I work with, I refer to them as people with complex communication needs. And so it's this idea that I've taken from that realm where I'm going to presume competence of the person I work with. And what that means is when I meet somebody, whether it be a child with autism, an adult who just suffered a stroke or a traumatic brain injury, however they're showing up, and they may not be able to communicate to me, they may not be able to speak, they may not be able to even fully make eye contact and show full attention and awareness with me, but I am going to presume that they are competent enough to completely understand everything that I have to say and presume that they know exactly what they want to communicate, and the barrier and the breakdown is not in their intelligence. The barrier is in their ability in their current state to get their message out in a way that is understandable to all. And so it's my job as a speech therapist who's specializing in AAC to get to know them, meet them where they're at, find out what it is that they're trying to communicate, and then find a way to bridge that gap and have them communicate in another way. And in working with, like I said, I've worked for 10 years in this field. And so I've worked with many, many individuals like this someone who doesn't know anything about this field, hasn't worked with this population before, they see them and they look like, they're completely almost unconscious. Like they're walking around and they're looking at their hands and they're not paying attention to you and they're not listening to you. But I presume that they, again, can completely understand me and can communicate when they have the needs. And time again, I have experienced when I approach these children or these adults in this way, that they are then able to step up and communicate when I take the time to bridge that gap. And so after seeing this so many times, and I have stories that truly feel like miracles where I've worked with children who, 9, 10 years old and have never spoken their first word, and they get a communication device, this new way of communicating, and suddenly, lo and behold, they do understand everything that we're saying, and they do have things to say, and they have wonderful thoughts, and they have really insightful things to share. And I even have experiences with children like this, a handful, who, after working with this alternative means for a while, actually develop verbal speech and can speak. And if I had brushed them off and just assumed, oh, this is a non-speaking individual, they don't have any intelligence, there's no point in trying to dig this out, then they never would reach that place. But there's enough people out there with this mindset. And so after being in this field for the time that I have, I've started to expand this viewpoint past the population that I work with and approach every individual that I meet with this same mindset and not allow my biases to prevent me from connecting with others on a deeper level.
And that's what's really amazing. I mean, yeah, she's got a bunch of stories about people that, she has worked with where there was no real way, no one was connecting with them. And then after her approaching in this way, there's major breakthroughs. And so what I love about that is thinking about, okay, what if we apply that not just to someone like you just said, not just to someone who is, handicapped or, it's obvious that there's something going on, but there's a lot more subtle ways this same sort of thing is happening, right? Between races, between socioeconomic classes, between, it's happening all over the place. And we all have to be so careful with even those of us who, claim to be working so hard on being seen all as equal in one, and it's so easy, especially because we've been programmed from childhood, and different people in different ways have been, I grew up in the South. There's a lot of programming like about, people, if they're different, then they're not is whatever, and so that stuff is really ingrained. I mean, what's happened to you before 6 years old is like, super, super subconscious. And so, as someone who sort of values their own intelligence and, and that sort of thing, it's like, I got to be really careful. And a lot of you listening, same way, I'm sure, you think of yourself as highly intelligent and capable. And that's a slippery slope to then say, I'm sizing this guy, this girl up, and they're dumb. They're ignorant.
Right. And a way that this comes up a lot that, can be very subconscious is differing dialects. So, like we talked about, you're from the South. So the dialect...
I reckon things is all right down there.
Yeah, like there are certain dialects that are valued more highly in our society as being intelligent. Take British, UK dialect, for example. Somebody talks in UK dialect and you're immediately going to feel like they're more educated or smart if you're not careful, if you don't take, actively choose to listen. And so this is something that we all can do when interacting with people and we hear these other dialects like the South or, even like some Asian dialects and things that sometimes people, when they hear these dialects, they immediately start to get a bias against them just because, again, it's been so programmed into us. And it takes, even me as someone who really, really embodies this and lives this, it takes being proactive, and it's an active act to listen to somebody with a very different dialect from your own to consciously make the decision, I'm not going to let this dialect impact my opinion of them, and I'm going to listen to the content of what they're saying, and then make my decision as to how I feel about what they're saying based solely on the actual words and the content and the message that is being delivered.
Well, when you do that, you're opening up an energetic portal for them to step into their highest self because they're going, everything in some way, shape, or form is a reflection of you. So as soon as you're entering an engagement or interaction or conversation with someone who, maybe in another time or place or within a more normal, quote unquote, perspective, you'd be like, instantly you wrote them off. And they're just like, yeah, they got nothing valuable to say. They're kind of an idiot. I'm sort of going to disengage as quickly as possible. And, but when you, like you talked about earlier today, like where you really say, okay, I'm going to really hear them out. I'm going to really listen. And I know a lot of you out there can relate to this, like, and I think it's a great experiment for all of you out there, me included. Like, so the next time that person at your work or the next time that person, that you bump up against, that you sort of have this biased, this judgment, this idea about them having nothing of value to offer, do it as an experiment with yourself, to say, okay, I'm going to actually approach them from a different state energetically. And even though they're dressed like, Bozo the Clown, and I really want to just honk their nose, like I'm going to listen to what they have to say and see if there's something of value there. And I can almost guarantee there will be something really powerful that comes out of that, where there's like, oh my gosh, this person just offered something that, was, once again, it's like, it can be total medicine. They're being the master in that moment because they're helping to give you what you need. And because you allowed to stop judging the book by the cover, right? Then you actually could receive the gift that they have. And you know what I think of is, and you mentioned this, I think, when we were talking about it, was episode 3 of Optimistic with Sahara Rose. She has a great story. If you guys go to optimistic.tv and check it, I don't know if, for those of you who haven't seen that episode yet, it's episode 3. She talks about a great story where she was in New York, right?
Yeah, she was in New York and she was running late for something, and she ran into someone who, she said it looked like a homeless person, kind of smelly, disheveled, and he looked like he needed help. And so, in her head, she thought to herself, I consider myself a good person. If I'm really a good person, I can stop and I can help this guy. And so she helps him along the way. And
he's trying to find his way to the subway or
yeah,
something?
And so she helps him to the subway. And right as he's getting on, I think she thinks to ask him or something like, oh, where are you headed? And he says, oh, I'm off to a physics conference. I'm a quantum physicist or something like that.
She thought this was like a homeless person that was just like a complete babbling idiot.
Right. And so the lesson in there and what I was relaying, the reason we brought it up earlier when I was relaying to Brandon is, again, just this, you never know. You never know when you look at somebody. And it can be so easy because, again, we're talking a lot about the difference between, okay, yeah, there's anomalies and all that, but there's also the generality of, okay, most people that aren't showered and, are hanging out on the street and are disheveled clothing are going to be A, B, or C. And I said, I don't buy into that. I am not going to buy into the belief of any sort of blanket generality statement of most people this or that. I'm going to always presume that every single person I'm bumping up against may be the most magnificent, interesting, highly evolved soul that I have ever met.
The most highly evolved, stinky soul I ever did meet.
Absolutely, yeah. 100%.
No, so there was speaking of the gift, when you actually do what she did, she stopped. She said, if I'm a good person, I'm going to help. I should help this person. She decided to do that, even though she was in a hurry. She got him, to the subway. She was shocked to find out this person was highly educated. And then as soon as she let him go and he was on his way, she got the call immediately after from Deepak Chopra, who she had met briefly before, who basically called and said, hey, I want to have a meeting with you, which led to him then endorsing her book and, sort of endorsing her as the voice of the millennial generation. And now she's, very popular and, very successful and a popular podcast. She's actually been on this podcast as well. So, what a great lesson, right? There was there's teaching there for her. And then all of a sudden something really beautiful opened up afterwards because she didn't allow that, oh my gosh, I'm too good for this or, whatever. And she really stepped into being the biggest and best person she could be. So, great story.
Yeah.
Well, we're already almost at 30 minutes here. What do you know? Anything that you want to share as we sort of wind down? Anything that comes to mind? Maybe tell them where they can follow you and that, Karen is actually going to be launching a podcast soon as well.
I am, yeah. So I have my speech account that if you're interested in learning more about AAC, you can follow me at Speechy Vibes. It's spelled Speech IE Vibes. And I do post things about AAC and the world that I am involved in. And then I'm going to be launching a podcast. It's not out yet, but it's called SLPs in a Pod. And it's myself and another SLP who she is 1 year ahead of me as far as her education. So she is in her first year in the field doing her fellowship year. And I am in my final year of grad school. So our podcast is really just about us entering the field, being newbies in the field, our experiences. So if you're interested in speech at all, or if you're interested in the field or just want to hear more about it, then that's definitely a cool podcast to check out.
Yeah, if you guys, anyone out there who's like, what am I going to do for my career or whatever, and it interests you, I've never had a partner who's so lit up about what they do. And, my mom is two of my mom there's 4 children in her family, and 2 of them are special needs, including my mom's twin, who's no longer with us, passed away before I was born. But so it's been something, my nephew, her grandson also as Asperger's syndrome. And so it's been such a theme in our life. My mom, it's one of her biggest passion points is helping people with these special needs. And now my partner is like, the only other person I've seen so lit up about it, ever is my mother. And now, Karen is like so excited about the difference that she can make with these people. And so if any of you out there are like, oh, how can I, there may be someone out there that will hear this and be like, oh my gosh, I never considered that. And so I'm sure you'd love to connect with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Reach out to me. One of my favorite things to do is to inspire other people to explore this field, because I've truly seen in my own life, I have to say that nothing else transformed my life more than the relationships I formed with the individuals that I worked with. It really, evolved my soul for sure.
Being able to help people who are looking for an avenue to communicate and connect with the world, and definitely rewarding. So with that being said, we have one last little synchronicity here. As you guys know, whenever I have someone who stops by for a co-host, a lot of times I'll give them the DJ controls to play a track, and you threw out a song, and I'm like, you realize this song is somewhat what we're talking about, right? Learning how to interpret how other people communicate and seeing through the, judging beyond the cover of the book, so to speak, and hearing the real message beyond it all. And then the song that you threw out that you wanted to hear
is Jade Cicada, Speaking in Tongues.
This is Speaking in Tongues. Hope you guys enjoy. Till next time, journey well. Love you so much. And if you're feeling the call to come for a week retreat-style Mystic Manor immersion, remember to go now and book your time to speak with me directly about stepping into the optimistic vortex at calendly.com/talkwithbrandon while there are still spots left. Otherwise, I look forward to co-creating magic with you at the Mystic Manor.
Jump.